Welcome to the Runes of Ranudar. This is an episodic fantasy fiction currently being published on Royal Road, and there's a link below in the description. A brief recap of our previous episode. Our protagonists have sailed to the Shielings Islands to find antiquities scholar Lowell Horfast. Nessa presents Lowell with a mysterious ancient document of riddles to authenticate. And now, let's go to Chapter 6. "You're sure Mr. Horfast is fine with you bringing along another guest for dinner?" asked Jonas as he followed Shellah up the hill to Horfast House. "He would be insulted if I did not. Hosts in the Shielings are measured by their hospitality," Shellah explained, as she lifted the hem of her plaid dress to step over some refuse in the road. "If I had left you behind at the inn, he would be aghast. There's always an extra place set at the table, even at the most humble homes. Besides, you really need to see the strange scroll Nessa has." Wenlow greeted them at the door, took their cloaks, and ushered them into the dining room where Lowell and Nessa were waiting. Shellah quickly introduced Jonas to the chiefs of the Horfasts. "Welcome, Mr. Ricer. So happy to have you at my table," Lowell exclaimed. "And Miss Shellah, that's a handsome Skyfast plaid you have on. Makes one proud to see our traditions continue." As Shellah promised, dinner was sumptuous. Roast beef, stewed vegetables, fresh bread, thick honeyed cream for dessert, and plenty of the chief's whiskey. Soon they were back in the library to inspect Nessa's mysterious ancient scroll. A fortune in fine beeswax candles were lit to make the room bright. "So you believe these are all locations?" asked Jonas after Lowell read the scroll aloud. "Makes a certain amount of sense, if in a general way." "This is why we're here," said Nessa. "Lowell will know more about the lore behind these areas as to ancient holy places or anything culturally significant to Old Laren once we've narrowed down the general locations. The first one, the Mundy Isle, already sounds promising. Perhaps we can even journey out there to that island and confirm." "I would not recommend that," said Shellah. "The Reavers would be out that way. They hide in the smaller outer isles. And Mundy Head is uninhabited. There is no ferry. That sea cave is very dangerous. I've been there before when I was much younger, and the only way to get onto the head is up through that cave. The whole isle has sheer cliffs on its coast." "You've been there, and you have seen the mounds?" asked Nessa eagerly. "Have they been looted? Lowell, do you know?" She turned to Lowell, who shrugged. "No, we don't go out onto the head," Shellah continued. "They're hogbowen." Nessa looked at Lowell. "Hogbowen? What?" Lowell sighed. Hogboons are the mythical guardians of burial mounds, thought to be an old wives' tale to frighten children from paddling out to the mounds. "So anyone could just go out there?" asked Nessa, incredulous. "Kids do it? Shellah, you did this as a child?" Lowell grinned widely. "I did too long ago. Shielings children are a bit wilder than your ordinary average mainland child. To get to Mundy Head, you either steal your parents' sailing dinghy and brave the rough outside cliff waters to the cave mouth, or you paddle in your hide canoe through the interior channel to the tidal marsh, then through Dean Sea Arch and Trua's Chasm to approach it from behind the sea stacks." "And if you survive that," said Shellah, "your ma whips you. Particularly if you wreck the dinghy like my brother did. The canoe was a better choice." Lowell nodded in agreement. Nessa took a deep breath, her expression frozen into a grimace. "Authenticating this scroll is very important to me. I don't want to hear anyone mocking this." She swept out of the room. Shellah heard some angry words she presumed to poor Wenlow, and then a heavy door slam. "I should probably go after her," said Shellah. "No, give her a moment," said Lowell. "Sounds like she went out to the garden to get some air, and she would never leave this behind." He waved the old parchment in his hand. "I don't know if she's told you, but our Nessa is a relic hunter," Lowell explained. "People with deep pockets and an interest in the old magics, largely from Laren, hire sorcerers to find and validate trinkets from the previous age, reminders of when they ruled the world and had the power of gods. These things carry a good price if they can be proven authentic." "Is it real, this document?" Jonas asked. "Maybe, I don't know yet, but it feels like it, if you know what I mean," said Lowell. "It has a certain spark to the touch if you're taught to recognize it." The candlelight sparkled on fresh raindrops spotting the window exterior. "I'm going to fetch her," said Shellah. She placed her whiskey shell on the table. "Maybe I can calm her down." Wenlow led Shellah out to the wild garden, where she found Nessa pacing back and forth in the spitting rain. "You should come back in. If you get sick, you'll be stuck in town longer than you would like." Nobody understands, said Nessa, fuming. As we speak, Torrend is on the mail ship to Coram City with the seal, where he will fully claim credit from our employer for this discovery. That's why we split up, so he can run there and make the greater share of the find. And I am the schoolgirl with the side errand to the old scholar at the edge of nowhere. Nessa turned to face her. Or maybe you do understand. Every time a man got an opportunity or was paid more or given more respect for a job, whereas everyone assumed you slept with someone for that same opportunity. Shellah nodded. I was never that pretty, though. Just made less money. If I could bring back one of the runes, that would leave Torrend with just a moldy old seal and a modern copy of the scroll. He doesn't have the knowledge or connections at the university to work through the riddles, at least not that I'm aware of. Listen, said Shellah, I imagine there's a reason why those runes are hidden in locations such as Mundy Head. It is genuinely dangerous getting out there. I bet they're not supposed to be found. It sounds like we are so close it just kills me. I really need this. And Torrend is a slick, smug bastard. I can imagine the look on his face if I present our boss with a rune and say, why do you even need him? This could be the find of the century. Nessa reached out to grab both of Shellah's hands, pulling her close. And I will pay you double whatever was on that contract. Jonas, too. Shellah considered for a long moment, thinking about a life of knitting socks in a little room above a cheap Northport tavern, then sighed. Well, if we're going to be paddling to the head, you're going to need some pants. I'm making no promises for Jonas, but I will take you there. A few days later, they arrived in the small fishing village of Dunwislow on the northern coast of the main island. To Shellah's surprise, both Jonas and Lowell agreed to go on this visit to Mundy Head. Lowell's carriage carried them in comfort across the rolling heathered hills and moorlands of the island, and he had relatives in Wislow who were happy to host them as they made their plans for the journey. Shellah and Jonas went to the waterfront to scout for sailing canoes to rent as the others went to gather supplies. So you think this is a good idea? Asked Jonas as Shellah bent to inspect a long, narrow 4-person sailing canoe for seaworthiness. No, but it is more money, she answered, which is why you are here too. True. Jonas looked out onto the choppy waters and the many islands which shadowed the distance. This is going to be a challenge in a sailing canoe. It looks tippy. Shellah pointed towards the nearest large island to the east. The hardest sailing comes right as we leave Dunwislow and cross this channel to Larendy Island. Then it's fairly sheltered as we followed the inside coast of Larendy to the marshes. From there, we paddle. Through the arch and then through the chasm. No good comes from any place called chasm. We'll just have to time it right with the tides. This is why we need a narrow boat. Remember, I once did this myself in a much smaller craft. Shellah stepped into the canoe to check the seats and any interior storage, then unrolled the sail to inspect it. This one's looking all right. Feels stable. Plenty of room for gear. I'm glad Lowell had a tent and most supplies at his house. He's definitely the most excited by this expedition. What did he call it? A grand lark. Jonas shook his head. The old man could be insane. Shellah laughed a little. He certainly is, definitely insane. She carefully rocked her weight back and forth in the canoe. Yeah, we'll be camping along Larendy and then on Craddock just past the northern edge of the marsh. And from there it's a hard, straight paddle to the sea stacks. And after the sea stacks, it's Mundy Head? Yep, there's a tiny hidden beach behind one of the stacks which will be our last camp. You can only approach Mundy Head in the morning when the sea is calm, the tide is out, and the winds are hitting the other side of the island. Reverse order for everything coming back. And we should plan for an extra day or two. Spring weather is chancy. We'll definitely missing the wind dancer then, said Jonas. We'll be stuck in Dundarlow for a bit when we get back. That's Nessa's problem, said Shellah. And let's hope we don't meet any reavers out by Mundy. They typically don't come into the interior passage, and there's nothing for them by Mundy Head itself. But the outer islands and the eastern side are all getting raided. After securing the boat, Shellah and Jonas met the others back at Lowell's cousin's house. Gear stowed in doubled oilcloth bags was piled by the entry, the tent, a week of food and supplies. Shellah added a long coil of rope. Another oilcloth wrapped their swords, including Lowell's broadsword. "You never know about those hog boons," he had said when he took it down from over his mantle. A few of his books made the trip, too. Shellah thought about the available room for stowage in the sailing canoe. It was going to be stuffed. Lowell's cousin, after a matronly diatribe about them all being crazy, added a sack of freshly baked scones to the pile. Shellah gathered them around a rough map she had drawn of their route. "We'll leave first thing in the morning. The crossing to Larendy is exposed, but if we leave early before the winds and tides pick up, we'll miss the roughest part. Be sure to bundle up. And there'll be midges on the beach at Larendy and Craddock and throughout the marsh. I know a cantrip to lessen their bites, but be aware they're around." "Lowell, what do we need to know about hog boons?" asked Jonas. "And Nessa, do we know what we're looking for once we get onto the head? We'll need to be in and out." "It'll likely be the biggest barrow," said Nessa. "I'll know it when I see it." Lowell pulled one of his books out from the pile and started to page through it. Hogbowen are the guardian spirits of the barrows. They are linked to their mount by a token. They'll wear one about their person, and another matching token will be with the burial somewhere. "Kind of like guild tokens," laughed Jonas. Shellah chuckled uneasily. "Possibly," continued Lowell. He showed them a page from his book with a sketch of what looked to be a long-clawed goblin-like creature. "We certainly don't want to meet one." The next page had an illustration of what looked to be a long-clawed scarecrow in tattered clothes. Claws were the defining theme, Shellah noted. "They might vary by the power of whoever was buried in the mound. The old sorcery was necessary to bind a hog boon to the barrow. Even old tribal chiefs like myself don't get hog boons now when we pass," said Lowell sadly. "A shame," said Jonas. "Per what I've read, they cannot be killed, but dispelled if the barrow token can be found and cast into a bog. Which reminds me..." Lowell rooted about his cousin's house and over her objections found a shovel and a stout, gnarled old shillelagh to add to the pile. "We might need a bigger canoe," said Shellah. At dawn the next morning, after some considerable packing and repacking of the canoe, they set off, Lowell in the bow, Shellah astern, Jonas and Nessa seated in the middle of the boat. As Shellah forewarned, the channel crossing was a rough sail against the winds and morning tide, but soon they were within the sheltered side of Larendy Island. After a peaceful afternoon of sailing, they camped on Larendy for the night. The next day they sailed past the north end of Larendy and past the mouth of an enormous tidal marsh early that afternoon. "Don't we have to go through that marsh?" asked Nessa. She had been remarkably quiet. Shellah thought she might be a little seasick and quite possibly overwhelmed by her choice to attempt this. "We do," said Shellah, "but we're going to camp on West Craddock Beach tonight." She pointed to the next headland just to the north as she adjusted the sail. "We'll backtrack to the marsh channel at dawn tomorrow. It's going to be a very long day of paddling before we make it to the next safe camp. Everyone needs to rest and get ready for that because it sails down until we reach Mundy Head." A vivid orange sunset lit their camp on the beach. Around the bonfire, Jonas and Shellah shared some of Lowell's whiskey. The smoke and Shellah's cantrip largely kept the midges at bay. Nessa and Lowell had already settled into the tent for some sleep, the comfortable silence occasionally interrupted by the honk of a snore. Jonas yawned. "I might join them in a moment. All that sailing and sea breeze takes a lot out of you." The twilight sky reddened. Clouds fantastically backlit a glowing salmon pink at the horizon, the dark humps of Hoarfast Isle in the distance to the west. Some stars started to wink in the clear skies overhead. Shellah thought they had been incredibly lucky with the weather. "Why don't I take the first watch then? It'll be a long day tomorrow. You head in and I'll put out the fire in a bit." Jonas retired to the tent. Shellah let the fire dwindle to glowing coals, enjoying some quiet to plan their next day. Nessa hadn't ever paddled before, and she was sure it had been a while since Jonas or Lowell had their hands on the oars. The passage through the marsh would be a gentle way for everyone to get acquainted with rowing. She started to gather the explosion of gear around their campsite to get a head start on the chaos she was sure would greet their morning. As she picked up an empty water skin, she heard a crackle in the beach grass behind the camp. Shellah stood to check the tent. Maybe someone went to relieve themselves in the grass. But she saw 3 soundly sleeping bodies inside, snug in their cloaks in the chilling evening air. As she walked behind the tent, Shellah drew her sword. Don't come to the mounds, Shellah Skyfast, a low voice creaked. Show yourself, she said, raising her blade. If you do, your doom awaits. You will all die or be forever changed. Shellah couldn't see who spoke from the tall grass. A breeze rustled the dry stalks in the twilight, which eerily formed the indistinct shape of a tall man against the shifting shadows of the dunes. Don't let doom fall upon your house. Don't disturb my master's house, and I won't disturb yours. Shellah heard some footsteps in the sand behind her and the soft scrape of a blade being drawn from its sheath. Shell, what is that? Jonas whispered. I think that's our hog boon, she hissed back. The tall grasses waved in the wind, parting and reforming solidly into a scarecrow as it approached. Jonas swore. Spiny thistle leaves and hawthorn spikes formed its long-clawed hands, and it was clothed in a rotten old plaid. Its head was the heavily horned skull of a coastal ram. It stank of seaweed, peat, and wet wool. A miasma, she thought, remembering the first riddle. Don't disturb my master's house, and I won't disturb yours, it repeated. A strong gust of wind suddenly blew in from the sea behind it, untangling the grass and dispersing the enchantment. They stood still for a long moment, staring out into the whispering beach grass and the dark dunes beyond. My ma was not wrong. Those things are creepy, said Shellah after a deep breath. She resheathed her sword. Sweet Finna, protect us. We've been complacent, admitted Jonas. Not sure why I assumed we'd be safe. I was only thinking of the Reavers. Me too. Well, I won't be able to sleep now. They watched for a little while longer before returning to the fire pit, where Shellah found the whiskey. Whiskey was already turning into a recurring theme for this job, and Shellah wasn't sure that was good. She took a swig directly from the bottle anyway before handing it to Jonas. You should head back in. I'll get the camp cleaned up. If that thing wanted to hurt us here, I'm sure it would have already done so. Did you see a token on it? Jonas asked. Lowell said it would have a token of some sort. No, I didn't. Shellah gazed out over the sea to the west, where the silhouette of Hoarfast Isle could still be seen in the distance. It would be a hard crossing over the whirlpools and tidal overfalls on that side of the channel, but possible if they needed to retreat. We're still at least a day away from Mundy Head. These things are supposedly tied to their mounds. How powerful must this hog boon be if it can reach us here? Shellah sighed. Well, we've got some good questions for Lowell in the morning. If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe for the latest episodes. I aim to have fresh chapters here weekly. I hope to see you soon for our next episode.